Well, as mentioned, President Xi has held a number of bilateral meetings. He is indeed scheduled to be meeting soon with President Joe Biden of the United States. Now, as Biden prepares to leave office, what's the significance of this face-to-face?
Well, obviously, at any meeting which brings together the two most powerful leaders in the world, President Biden and President Xi, has great significance. China and the United States, of course, the biggest partners in APEC, so their meeting holds great significance. Now, that said, President Biden's conditions as a lame duck president obviously has an impact on that, and the meeting is obviously under the shadow of the result of the November 5 elections in the United States. So that's something else we ought to keep in mind.
Now, broadly speaking, what have been the highlights of this year's APEC meeting?
Well, I will say this. It seems to me that the key point here is the message that APEC is sending out to the rest of the world, is that APEC stands for two very important things. One of them is free trade across the Pacific Basin. And the second is that it stands for multilateralism in the Pacific and around the world as well. Now, those two very important principles are today under threat, and it is important that APEC stand up for them and underscore their significance.
So elaborating on just that point, talk to the importance of APEC as a platform for promoting multilateral cooperation, especially in a world that has many different polar points of influence.
Yes, well, you know, APEC has been around now for 35 years. It was established in 1989. It brings together 21 economies from 3 different continents, Asia, Australasia, and the Americas. And it has promoted collaboration and cooperation across these various continents very effectively during these past 35 years. In that sense, it represents a very significant international organization that ought to be, continue to be supported and given the necessary impetus it needs in these troubled and difficult times in which we live in. A key thing here about APEC is that it brings together countries from very different political and economic systems, and that they, despite these differences, they manage to work together. And in a world that seems increasingly fragmented, that seems to me is extremely important.
And if you would, just speak to, again, this notion of cooperation, synergy. We have a number of multilateral organizations across the globe, including the likes of G20, BRICS. How do they all fit together to do, as you're saying, and talk about and affect cooperation globally?
Yes. Well, the important thing here is to keep in mind that precisely we're living in these troubled times. Some of the more established and traditional organizations, like the United Nations, find themselves in serious trouble, and they are unable to deal with various crises around the world. Under these circumstances, it is the newer and less traditional entities, like the G20, which President Xi will visit at their summit in Rio in a few days, and APEC itself, that have to come to the fore and fight for these principles that I have mentioned before, and that find themselves under threat right now.
Jorge Heine, thank you so much for joining us. We'll leave it there.
Thank you.